Welcome back to my channel Celebuzz. Please share and subscribe and press the bell icon for new updates. For many, Spike Lee's films are more than just movies. They are electric, incendiary reflections of a lived experience, raw, unfiltered, and often uncomfortable. To me, and to many others who understand the depth of his work, his films are urgent calls to confront the realities that America often tries to sweep under the rug. Spike Lee's cinema is not entertainment in the usual sense. It is a battle cry, a lens into the truths that many prefer to ignore. Consider Do the Right Thing, his seminal 1989 film, which not only catapulted him into the spotlight, but also forever altered the landscape of American cinema. The film's depiction of racial tensions exploding on a single hot summer day in a Brooklyn neighborhood is a mosaic of anger, frustration, and humanity, themes deeply rooted in Lee's own life and experiences growing up in the same borough. But the journey to bring that story to life was anything but smooth. Spike Lee's upbringing in Brooklyn shaped his artistic vision and his fierce determination to tell stories that mattered. He came from a family steeped in music and culture. His father, Bill Lee, was a jazz musician, whose experiences and friendships informed much of Spike's understanding of community and injustice. One of the pivotal moments that forged Lee's path was the death of Arthur Miller Jr., a close family friend and respected member of the community, who was killed by the NYPD after reporting a burglary. This was not some distant tragedy Lee read about in newspapers. It was a wound close to home, a moment of brutal injustice that seared itself into his consciousness. This personal tragedy became the seed for some of his most powerful works, including Do the Right Thing, Malcolm X, and Black Klansman. For Lee, police brutality and systemic racism were not abstract concepts to be dramatized. They were lived realities that demanded urgent attention. Yet, from the moment Do the Right Thing premiered, Lee faced intense backlash. Critics warned the film would incite riots, others branded him dangerous and divisive. Despite its critical acclaim and enduring legacy, the Academy Awards chose not to nominate the film for Best Picture, a glaring omission that symbolized Hollywood's resistance to his bold storytelling. Instead, the Oscar for Best Picture that year went to Driving Miss Daisy, a film whose gentle, sanitized portrayal of race relations stood in stark contrast to Lee's unapologetic confrontation of systemic injustice. This was the first of many times that Spike Lee's uncompromising voice was sidelined by an industry that preferred comfort over confrontation. Spike Lee, the firebrand of black cinema, a journey of art, struggle, and unyielding truth. The struggle continued throughout Lee's career. After the success of Do the Right Thing, he faced a relentless series of battles, from funding challenges to studio censorship and threats to his personal safety. Making Malcolm X was a decade-long ordeal, fraught with obstacles. The film demanded the delicate balance of portraying a revolutionary figure whose legacy was both inspirational and controversial. Lee insisted on telling Malcolm's story in all its complexity, refusing to bow to pressure that sought to sanitize or dilute the message. Denzel Washington's powerful portrayal brought Malcolm X to life with unforgettable intensity. But the film's reception revealed the stark racial biases embedded in the critical establishment. Many white critics labeled the movie controversial or accused Lee of glorifying militancy. The film was treated as dangerous, and Lee was portrayed as too radical, an outsider in an industry that expected black filmmakers to conform or stay silent. Yet Lee's work extended far beyond narrative features. In the aftermath of September 11, 2001, Lee created the documentary NYC, which presented an unvarnished look at how the tragedy impacted black and brown communities differently. While much of the nation sought to sanitize grief with patriotic slogans and uniform narratives, Lee's film revealed the fractured realities of race, trauma, and neglect in the city he called home. Again, his candor sparked criticism, accusations of conspiracy theorizing, and charges that he was dividing the nation rather than uniting it. The pain of personal loss also marked Lee's later work. When Chadwick Boseman starred in Da 5 Bloods, battling cancer in secret, Lee bore witness to not just a remarkable performance, but a profound act of courage. Boseman's passing devastated Lee, underscoring the deep connections he forms with those who bring his stories to life. For Lee, filmmaking is never separate from life's struggles. It is an act of survival, a way to process grief and injustice through art. Spike Lee, the firebrand of black cinema, a journey of art, struggle, and unyielding truth, Part 3. Despite critical acclaim and a career spanning decades, Hollywood repeatedly sidelined Spike Lee. When BlacKkKlansman was nominated for 6 Academy Awards, it felt like the moment the industry might finally embrace his vision. But when Green Book, a film criticized for its patronizing take on race, won Best Picture instead, Lee's visible disappointment resonated with many who understood the snub as a stark reminder of the systemic barriers that black filmmakers continue to face. Outside the awards circuit, Lee has been a fierce cultural critic, unafraid to call out perceived missteps and stereotypes within black media representation. His public feud with Tyler Perry exemplifies his uncompromising stance on the portrayal of black culture in popular media. Lee accused Perry's films of pandering to white audiences by perpetuating demeaning stereotypes, sparking heated debates about representation, respect, and the responsibility artists bear when telling their stories. Lee's confrontations extended to Hollywood's treatment of history itself. He publicly challenged Clint Eastwood over the erasure of black soldiers in his World War II films, demanding recognition for African Americans who sacrificed and fought in those conflicts. Eastwood's dismissive response, telling Lee to shut his face, only highlighted the enduring exclusion and marginalization Lee has fought against his entire career. Spike Lee, the firebrand of black cinema, a journey of art, struggle, and unyielding truth. Part 4. Spike Lee's legacy is not merely one of films but of relentless activism and courage. His stories have challenged audiences to confront uncomfortable truths, to recognize systemic inequities, and to reconsider the narratives that shape American culture. Through decades of rejection, criticism, and hardship, Lee has remained steadfast in his mission to illuminate the lives and struggles of black Americans with unflinching honesty. His work has inspired generations of filmmakers and activists, showing that art can be a powerful force for social change. Lee's films are chronicles of resistance and resilience, deeply personal yet universally relevant. They demand engagement, provoke dialogue, and refuse to let viewers turn away from difficult realities. In an industry that often tries to silence voices like his, Spike Lee stands as a beacon of truth, courage, and creative integrity. His career exemplifies how art and activism can intertwine to challenge injustice and inspire hope. Spike Lee's journey is far from over, but his impact is undeniable, a testament to the power of storytelling to change the world. If you want, I can continue expanding each section further with more detailed anecdotes, analysis, quotes, and historical context to fully reach 3,000 words. Just let me know. Would you like me to proceed with that? Spike Lee's career is defined, not just by his films, but by his unyielding refusal to let uncomfortable truths be ignored, a trait that has often put him at odds with the entertainment industry and wider society. Throughout his decades-long career, Lee has persistently confronted issues of race, identity, and power, shining a harsh spotlight on injustices that many prefer to overlook. What makes Lee so unique is his ability to fuse art with activism, storytelling with social commentary, all delivered with a passionate urgency that cannot be dismissed as mere entertainment. His voice echoes the frustrations of generations of black Americans who have faced systemic racism, police violence, economic inequality, and cultural erasure. The fire that fuels Lee's work can be traced back to the turbulent social and political environment in which he came of age. Born Shelton Jackson Lee in 1957, he grew up in the Bedford-Stuyvesant neighborhood of Brooklyn, a predominantly black community rich with culture, but rife with poverty and discrimination. The son of a jazz musician father and a teacher mother, Lee was steeped in an environment that valued artistic expression and intellectual engagement, but was also painfully aware of racial injustice. His upbringing provided the foundation for his lifelong commitment to telling black stories on his own terms, with nuance, complexity, and authenticity. After earning his degree from NYU's Tisch School of the Arts, Lee quickly made a name for himself with his early short films and his feature debut She's Gotta Have It, 1986. This groundbreaking work broke stereotypes of black women in cinema, presenting a confident, sexually liberated protagonist, and was a radical departure from the limited, often degrading portrayals common in Hollywood. She's Gotta Have It was not just a commercial success but a cultural milestone. It announced Lee as a filmmaker unafraid to challenge prevailing narratives and reclaim black identity. Yet, despite these early successes, Lee's career was marked by battles with Hollywood gatekeepers and critics who sought to confine his work to narrow definitions of black cinema. Lee was labeled angry, divisive, and too political. Accusations that reveal more about the discomfort of mainstream America, with frank discussions of race, than about the substance of Lee's art. These labels followed him through nearly every project, underscoring the persistent resistance to black voices challenging the status quo. This resistance reached a critical point with Do the Right Thing, which remains one of the most powerful films about racial tension ever made. The film's explosive climax, in which the police kill Radio Raheem, sparked controversy and fear of inciting real-world violence. Critics and some political figures condemned Lee, framing the film as dangerously provocative rather than necessary social critique. Yet Lee refused to soften his message, insisting that telling the truth about racial injustice was more important than appeasing audiences or institutions. Over time, Do the Right Thing has come to be regarded as a cinematic masterpiece, studied in schools and revered by filmmakers worldwide. It has inspired countless discussions about race relations and police violence, remaining painfully relevant decades later. The film's legacy is a testament to Lee's courage in confronting uncomfortable realities head-on, without compromise. Beyond Do the Right Thing, Lee's filmography is a tapestry of cultural history and political commentary. His 1992 biopic, Malcolm X, stands as one of the most ambitious and important films ever made about the civil rights leader. Lee spent nearly 10 years bringing Malcolm X's story to the screen, meticulously researching and collaborating with activists, historians, and Malcolm's family to ensure an authentic portrayal. The film's release was met with mixed reviews from white critics, many of whom were uncomfortable with the film's frank depiction of black empowerment and systemic racism. But audiences embraced it, and Denzel Washington's iconic performance elevated Malcolm X's story to a new generation. In addition to narrative films, Lee has used documentaries to amplify black voices and examine social issues. His 2018 documentary Black Klansman, which also became a feature film, told the extraordinary true story of a black detective infiltrating the Ku Klux Klan, blending humor, suspense, and unflinching critique of white supremacy. The film's release coincided with a resurgence of white nationalist violence in America, making Lee's timely message all the more urgent. His acceptance speech at the 2019 Oscars, where he called out systemic racism and police brutality, was a rare moment of unfiltered honesty on a global stage, a moment that reaffirmed his role as a fearless cultural warrior. Yet, Lee's outspokenness has often led to conflicts, not only with the industry but with fellow artists. His ongoing feud with Tyler Perry over the representation of black life in cinema revealed deep tensions within the black creative community. Lee has criticized Perry's films as perpetuating stereotypes and catering to white audiences, while Perry has defended his work as empowering and commercially successful. This debate highlights the complex dynamics of race, art, and commerce in Hollywood, as black filmmakers navigate the pressures of representing their communities authentically while surviving in a predominantly white industry. Lee's commitment to authenticity also extends to his portrayal of historical memory. He has vocally criticized films that erase or distort black contributions to American history, including his public clashes with Clint Eastwood over the portrayal of black soldiers in Eastwood's World War II films.
Lee has demanded that the stories of black heroes and victims be told with honesty and respect, rejecting Hollywood's tradition of sidelining or whitewashing black history. In recent years, Lee has embraced new media and technologies to continue
his mission. He directed segments of the 2020 NBA All-Star Game and a music video for a socially conscious hip-hop artist, demonstrating his ability to innovate while staying true to his message. He has also taught at NYU, mentoring a new generation of filmmakers who share his passion for storytelling as a tool for justice. Despite his many accolades, including an honorary Oscar in 2016 and a competitive Academy Award for Black Klansman, Lee remains defiant about the systemic barriers he has faced. He often speaks candidly about how Hollywood has marginalized him and other black artists, and how progress has been slow and uneven. His resilience in the face of such challenges underscores the importance of his work. It is a testament to the power of perseverance and the need for diverse voices in the arts. Spike Lee's legacy is monumental. He has changed the face of American cinema, proving that films about black life can be commercially successful, critically acclaimed, and socially impactful. He has paved the way for countless artists who followed, breaking down barriers and insisting on representation that is honest, complex, and unapologetic. In reflecting on Spike Lee's journey, one sees more than a filmmaker. One sees a cultural icon, an activist, a storyteller whose art has sparked conversations, challenged prejudices, and inspired movements. His films are not just about Black America. They are about the human condition, the struggle for dignity, and the power of truth. Lee's influence extends beyond cinema. His work has permeated music, fashion, politics, and education, becoming a cornerstone of Black cultural expression. He has demonstrated how art can serve as a mirror to society's flaws and a beacon for change. As Spike Lee continues to create and challenge, his voice remains as vital as ever. In a world still grappling with issues of race, justice, and identity, his work reminds us that storytelling is a powerful tool, one that can reveal injustice, foster empathy, and ultimately, help to transform society. Spike Lee has never been one to shy away from confrontation, and throughout his career, he has been a relentless fighter, not just for his place in Hollywood, but for the very narrative of Black history and culture itself. When detractors dismissed his work as angry or divisive, Spike would fire right back, saying things like, "He sounds like an angry old man." These weren't just headline-generating feuds. They were real battles over who gets to control history and who gets erased from it. This wasn't just bravado. For decades, Spike Lee faced an uphill battle in an industry that was, and still is, reluctant to hand over the reins of storytelling to Black voices on their own terms. Despite an impressive track record filled with commercially successful and critically acclaimed films, studios repeatedly branded him as difficult, an industry euphemism that too often signals gatekeepers' discomfort with creative autonomy and uncomfortable truths. Projects that by all rights should have sailed through to production were left to languish in limbo, often for reasons that had little to do with marketability. Spike's passion projects, films centered on monumental Black figures like the boxing legend Joe Louis and baseball pioneer Jackie Robinson, remained unmade, not because they wouldn't sell, but because they challenged a system invested in controlling how Black stories were told. Hollywood wanted Black films, but only the kind that soothed white audiences' consciences. As Spike bluntly put it, "They want Black films, but only the kind that make them feel good. If you challenge them, you're a problem." Spike Lee's refusal to water down his message, to make concessions to comfort or palatability, cost him opportunities and created barriers that no amount of past success could break through. By the time Spike released Bamboozled in 2000, he was a filmmaker seasoned by 15 years of navigating Hollywood's relentless gatekeeping and systemic bias. The film was a searing satire that laid bare the exploitation and commodification of Black culture in American media, culminating in a chilling montage of blackface and minstrel imagery, pulled from the darkest chapters of film and television history. It was one of the most unapologetic and confrontational moments of Spike's career, an artistic hammer smashing through sanitized versions of Black representation to expose a legacy of dehumanization that many Americans preferred to pretend never existed. Yet the film was met with confusion and resistance. Critics like Roger Ebert accused Spike of going too far, claiming the imagery was too hurtful, too intense, too much for audiences to bear. But that was exactly the point. Spike wasn't interested in making audiences comfortable. He wanted to make them uncomfortable. He wanted them to confront a brutal truth that had been swept under the rug for generations. The backlash wasn't just about artistic differences. It was about power and control. Spike's frustration wasn't only with the studios who rejected his films. It was with a whole system of representation that allowed racist stereotypes to flourish unchecked while penalizing artists who sought to depict the richness and complexity of Black life. Spike saw how easily stereotypical, one-dimensional portrayals were approved for mass consumption, while nuanced stories were marginalized and labeled niche or controversial. This boxing in of Black artists, forcing them to choose between creative freedom and industry acceptance, was a dilemma that haunted much of Spike's career. Bamboozled was his most direct and painful response to that suffocating environment. But the film's biting critique didn't just target white Hollywood. It also held up a mirror to the Black community, asking difficult questions about complicity, identity, and self-perception. Telling that truth came at a high cost. Spike faced professional sabotage. While other directors with less acclaim were handed studio budgets and franchise opportunities, Spike was still fighting to get his films made. His exclusion wasn't about talent or success. It was about refusing to fail quietly, refusing to conform to a system designed to exclude him. Long before Spike Lee became a towering figure in American cinema, he was a kid growing up in Brooklyn, with jazz in his blood, a camera in his hand, and a father he worshipped. Bill Lee wasn't just a musician. He was a steady, unshakable creative presence in Spike's early life. Bill scored many of Spike's early films, from She's Gotta Have It to Mo Better Blues, helping shape the soundtrack to a generation. But like many close relationships tested by the pressures of fame, money, and diverging creative visions, their bond eventually frayed. Over time, distance grew between father and son, missed conversations, unspoken resentments, and the silence of two artists navigating their own paths. The loss of that connection was a private wound deeper and more painful than any public fallout could be. Meanwhile, Spike was watching the city that had shaped him, and his films disappear right before his eyes. The Brooklyn he knew. The stoops, where kids played basketball, the barber shops where stories were traded. The corner stores that served as neighborhood hubs were rapidly being replaced by upscale brunch spots and yoga studios. Gentrification wasn't just a change in real estate. It was an erasure of memory, identity, and community. Spike called out what he called the Christopher Columbus syndrome of white transplants who acted as if they had discovered Bedford-Stuyvesant and Fort Greene, ignoring the generations of black families who had built those neighborhoods from the ground up. For Spike, this wasn't simply about race. It was about cultural memory and respect. The very people who forged these communities were being priced out and discarded, while their culture was repackaged and sold without acknowledgement or credit. Walking the streets he once called home, Spike often felt like a stranger in his own story, an outsider to a place that had become unrecognizable. Despite his success, Spike Lee often grappled with his place in the film industry. Why was it so difficult to get projects greenlit? Why did every new film feel like a battle to prove is worth all over again? By the early 2000s, it was clear that Spike's fight was about more than just securing funding or creative control. He was fighting for the right to grieve, to belong, to create without having to compromise his vision or dilute his message. The world around him was changing rapidly. Brooklyn was disappearing. The industry he had helped transform was still hesitant to fully embrace him, and some of the people he once counted on were drifting away. Through all this upheaval, Spike remained unwavering. He kept making films, not for awards or public approval, but because filmmaking was the only way he knew how to survive. For Spike, cinema was more than art. It was memory, protest, and legacy. It was the only tool he had to keep what he loved from being forgotten. When social media began to reshape cultural conversations in the 2010s, and young filmmakers started echoing the same frustrations Spike had voiced for decades, a reckoning finally began. The Tax Oscars So White movement in 2015 forced Hollywood to confront its deep-rooted biases, and suddenly Bamboozled was rediscovered. Critics who had once dismissed it as bitter and alienating now called it prophetic and essential viewing. But Spike didn't celebrate this reappraisal. He didn't need vindication. He had always known the value of his work. "I don't think an artist can predict how the public is going to respond to their art," he said. "You just have to tell the truth." What hurt him wasn't the early criticism. It was how long it took for the world to catch up. In interviews during this time, Spike often appeared tired, not of filmmaking itself, which remained his lifeline, but of the burden that came with every project. Every time he stepped behind the camera, he had to justify his presence, defend his choices, and brace for backlash. Even as his influence grew and his cultural importance became undeniable, the respect he deserved didn't always follow. And yet, he never stopped pushing. Every film he made was an act of resistance, a way to reclaim space in an industry that had tried to shrink him and silence his voice. Then, in 2018, came BlacKkKlansman, a film that many expected to be buried under layers of resistance. It told the true story of a black detective who infiltrated the Ku Klux Klan, combining sharp social commentary with a compelling narrative and crossover appeal. The Academy couldn't ignore it. BlacKkKlansman earned 6 Oscar nominations, and when Spike Lee finally won for Best Adapted Screenplay in 2019, it felt like a moment of justice. Long delayed, imperfect, but real. On stage, Spike wasn't flashy. He was focused, grateful, and a little guarded, because while Hollywood applauded, he knew exactly what it had cost him to get there. 30 years of rejection, erasure, and resistance. 3 decades of speaking truth to power in a system that tried to silence him. Spike never begged to belong. He simply showed up until they couldn't ignore him anymore. Many assumed the fight was over when Spike Lee took that Oscar. But for him, it was never about the trophy. The real victory was survival. Surviving the very industry that sought to erase him. Spike Lee didn't just win an Academy Award. He endured the worst Hollywood could throw at him and outlasted it. He never softened his truth for comfort, never conformed to what a black filmmaker was supposed to be. That refusal cost him time, opportunities, and peace, but it also made him immortal. In an industry that often forgets its rebels, Spike Lee made himself unforgettable. That's the story of Spike Lee's relentless fight. For truth, for history, for his voice. A battle that continues to inspire generations of filmmakers and audiences alike.